Welcome back to Worldview. Fresh whole milk or pasteurized milk? Well, I, for one, grew up with both, and it seems there's a heated battle underway for the hearts and minds of consumers. So heated that even the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recently weighed in with a study that our guests from the Weston A Foundation in Washington, D.C. are trying to alert consumers that fresh, whole, unpasteurized milk is perfectly safe. Now, Pete Kennedy's an attorney. He's not located in Washington. He's actually in Sarasota, Florida. And he's president of the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. They work on dairy issues for the Weston A Price Foundation, particularly the right of farmers to distribute raw milk and raw milk products direct to consumers. He's represented or assisted in the representation of dairy farmers facing possible state enforcement action in Florida, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And he's helped farmers get started in the business of distributing raw milk and raw milk products in many other states. He's written articles for Wise Traditions magazine on the interstate ban on raw milk and why this is a bad thing, and products for human consumption and on the legality of selling raw milk for interstate consumption. Now, living here on a farm, this is a very big issue for us. So first, let's start by saying, welcome to Worldview, Pete Kennedy.
Good afternoon, Dennis. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Now, I do live on a working farm, and my wife is a farmer's daughter. And when we visited the USA together a decade or so ago, we bought a quart container of that super high temperature pasteurized milk, which had an expiration date of nearly 1 month into the future, and both of us had to spit it out because we couldn't drink it. There's been a rather large and growing fight over the interstate transport of raw milk for sale in the U.S., so please, let's start there. Let's help our viewers understand what's the issue at stake here.
Well, a lot of it's really an economic issue in the guise of a health issue. Really, there's a market share at stake here. The conventional dairy industry has lost lots of market share. The demand for raw milk is growing all the time. So you just see there, at one time in this country, there were 600,000 dairy farmers in the conventional industry. Now there are a little over 8,000. So the demand is just decreasing all the time while the demand for raw milk is going up. So it's really pits two food systems, the industrial food system versus the local food system. And raw milk is really at the heart of the local food system in this country these days.
Now, you and the Weston A Price Foundation recently released a press release and a series of points that questioned what the Centers for Disease Control found in their report. Talk a little bit about the issues that both organizations have with that report.
Well, first of all, it bases its report on the number of outbreaks as opposed to the actual number of illnesses. I mean, raw milk is mainly sold at the local level. It's a very traceable food. If it is responsible for an outbreak, they'll find it. But when you look at the number of people who are actually sick, it's a very small number in most cases. And when the conventional dairy industry has an outbreak, it can be in the thousands. There was one outbreak back in the 80s where close to 200,000 people became sick. So just to use the number of outbreaks instead of the actual number of illnesses is entirely misleading.
Now, you have the support of a rather famous congressman who also ran for president in terms of trying to get the bans and the restrictions eased on interstate transport here. Talk a little bit about the involvement of Ron Paul, both as a congressman and as a presidential candidate.
Sure. Well, just as way of background first, there's been a ban for the past 25 years through federal regulation on raw milk for human consumption in interstate commerce. And Ron Paul, the last two sessions of Congress, has introduced a bill that, in effect, would reduce the ban. From what I understand, he actually doesn't drink that much raw milk himself, but he is a libertarian. He believes in freedom of choice. The bill would have kept regulation at the state level. Raw milk, more than any other food, is regulated at the state level because of the ban. And it just had, the first session he introduced it, didn't have a co-sponsor to the bill at all. The last session he had 5 co-sponsors. So it just, you can tell that with each time it's introduced, there'll be more support for it.
Well, and we are talking big food. By the way, we're speaking with Pete Kennedy of the Weston A. Price Foundation and also a farmers' right activist lawyer in Sarasota, Florida, here on Worldview with Denis Campbell. And we were just talking a second ago about big food. And like big pharma and big oil, they clearly have a stranglehold on the supply chain from farm to milk to whey products that are used for cheese and yogurt. So what are the issues with such tight control? What happens at the local level?
And what you've got right now is big food, or the industrial food system probably has around 98% of market share in this country. The local food system only has 2%, but it is growing all the time. But that, with the small margins, the tiny margins big food has, that 2% is quite a bit. So they're, through the media, they're for years have tried to demonize raw milk. And really, raw milk, more than any other food, is at the center of the conflict between the two food systems. Just the analogy to look at is when someone goes to the supermarket, they're usually going there to get a perishable item like milk. Once they're there, they'll buy any number of other products, but raw milk is what gets them to the supermarket in the first place. When you go on the farm, what we find with our members, our farmer members, is that raw milk is what brings the consumer there to initially. Once they're there, they might buy meat, poultry, eggs, produce, but raw milk is what gets them on the farm in the first place. So it's a lot more than just raw milk, sales of milk at stake here. Sure.
I mean, and if you look at the way that big food is flexing its muscles out there in the marketplace, I mean, is it going to affect you in any way that, for example, even the activists, the people that are trying to expose issues within the food chain itself, now have the fear of their filming efforts of animal abuse and things of that sort being against the law? Is that an issue that enters into the area of concern of what you're trying to do with raw milk?
Well, it's more, we're mainly concerned with giving the small farmers access to market, just removing the barriers to entry. We think that's an issue the public should be made aware of. You're talking about, the filming of the confined animal feed operations, because that right there is one of the biggest reasons people are going to try and purchase local food. But our main purpose is to protect the right of farmers and consumers to engage in direct commerce.
Well, best of luck with the efforts, Pete. I'm a huge fan of fresh foods and would wager that if it's worth fighting for, it must be good for you. Thank you for being on Worldview with us.
Okay, appreciate it, Dennis.
Peter Kennedy is an attorney in Sarasota, Florida, working on behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation in Washington, D.C., and their fight to provide consumers with choice and farmers with the support they need to wage this ongoing battle. You're watching Worldview with Denis Campbell. Stay right here.